It was a crisp morning on the ranch, the kind where the sunlight glints off the dewy grass and the only sounds are birds and the faint hum of engines in the distance. I had just finished inspecting my land and checking on my daughter, who was busy feeding the animals and enjoying the freedom that only ranch life can give. Everything seemed peaceful. That peace, as it often did when HOA Karen was nearby, was about to be shattered. Karen had somehow convinced herself that she had the authority to police not just the aesthetics of the neighborhood but the very safety and behavior of its residents. On this particular morning, she escalated her antics in ways I could never have imagined. According to her, my daughter, then just learning how to handle the day-to-day responsibilities of ranch life, was somehow in imminent danger. She picked up her phone and, with the urgency of a general calling troops to battle, dialed 911. "They need to remove the child immediately," she barked, her voice dripping with self-importance. She gave the dispatcher a 3-minute window and expected compliance. What Karen didn't know, and what made this situation surreal, was that I was the county sheriff. I had been nearby, checking fences and water lines, when the call came in. By the time Karen's frantic claims reached the dispatchers, I was already moving toward the front gate. I arrived just as Karen was finishing her dramatic retelling of the emergency. She turned to face me, eyes wide, and immediately tried to assert her imaginary authority. "You can't be here. You have to let the officers take her," she demanded, gesturing toward my daughter as though she were a criminal in a Hollywood movie. I stayed calm, letting her flailing theatrics play out for a moment. "Karen," I said, voice measured, "this is my property. My daughter is safe. There is no emergency here." Her face went pale as comprehension slowly dawned. The deputies she had summoned, ready to enforce her ill-conceived order, arrived at the scene expecting chaos. Instead, they were met by their own sheriff standing calmly in the sun, arms crossed, surveying his property. They paused, trying not to laugh, as Karen's confident narrative began to crumble in real time. Karen tried again, raising her voice. "But there are HOA rules. You're violating them. You can't." I cut her off. "HOA rules do not override the law. You do not have the authority to order the police to remove my child. You also do not have permission to be on this property uninvited." The deputies documented the incident, carefully noting that Karen's 911 call was frivolous. I could see the mental gears turning in her head as she struggled to comprehend that the very law she tried to weaponize against me was the law I represented. For once, Karen was powerless. As she fumed and stammered, my daughter continued her chores, entirely unfazed. She watered the horses, checked on the chickens, and even waved to the deputies, who were now politely ignoring Karen's increasingly erratic explanations. I took a moment to ensure that every interaction was documented. Photos of her phone in hand, her gestures, and even her car parked half on the grass, blocking a portion of the driveway. Evidence like this would make her next attempt far less credible. Karen eventually stormed back to her car, muttering about next time and legal consequences, as if her threats had any grounding in reality. The irony, of course, was that the entire incident had made her the laughingstock of the HOA community. Neighbors who had witnessed her frantic calls and dramatic hand-waving quietly whispered among themselves, amazed at her audacity and ineptitude. By the time the dust settled, 3302 had become a defining moment in the ongoing saga of HOA Karen. It was no longer just about trivial rules or petty disputes. It was about the audacity of someone trying to wield power over people far more competent, prepared, and legally protected than she could ever anticipate. We laughed about it later that evening. My daughter, oblivious to the chaos she had been caught in the middle of, asked if Karen was going to try that again. I chuckled and shook my head. "She might," I said, "but next time she'll be on the losing side from the start." That day became a benchmark for HOA Karen's limits. She had attempted to call the cops on a sheriff's own daughter, thinking she could force compliance. Instead, she had exposed herself as overzealous, ignorant, and completely powerless against the law. For us, it was just another day on the ranch. But for Karen, it was a lesson she would never forget.